What's up? Hey, today we're talking my postpartum running journey, sharing exactly what I did to get back to running safely and effectively after having a baby. For reference, I am currently about 6 months postpartum. I am running 2 times per week, not so much because of recovery, but more so scheduling. The last time we talked about running and my workout routine was closer to 16 weeks, so it's been a bit. But in that video, I gave you a week by week breakdown of everything I was doing to get back to exercise. So I highly recommend watching that video. I'll link it down below. But before we get started, I want to say a huge thank you to Koros for partnering with me on today's video. You've probably seen me wearing this watch before, but if you're not familiar, Koros is a technology company committed to helping you improve your athletic performance. I've been wearing Koros watches for a couple years now, and what I like about them is beyond just making a great watch, they've really built out their tech backend in terms of the data and information they're able to give you about your running, which I know what you're thinking. I'm not a professional athlete. Why would I need data about my running? I'm not a professional athlete either. Shocker. However, I found this helpful because they're able to give you information about your training intensity, your recovery, fatigue, metrics related to running forms. You can ensure you're running efficiently, reducing your risk of injury, all important things as you get back to running post-baby. So if you want to check out Koros for yourself, I will put a link in the description box down below, as well as they've done a special offer for our community where when you use my code, you can also get a free accessory. So when did I start running? Not at 6 weeks. And this is despite getting the all clear from my care team, not a pelvic PT, but like my care team, the people who delivered my baby. I had a healthy pregnancy, a straightforward delivery, a pretty easy recovery. And so it's not that I couldn't run, it's that I chose not to because I knew I shouldn't. Based on the current literature, it's recommended that women wait until at least 12 weeks postpartum before easing back into running. Reason being that the impacts of running result in a sudden increase in intra-abdominal pressure. And so if you're lacking pelvic floor strength, speed of contraction, or endurance, you're drastically increasing your risk of injury, which makes enough sense because let's say, best case scenario, you were somehow training at your usual intensity and difficulty right up until the day that you gave birth. Following birth, you did the smart thing. You took that time to rest, recover, go easy on your body. That's still 6 weeks of no training. In technical terms, this is called detraining. And while there are not many studies done specifically on postpartum women looking to get back into running, there was a 2013 meta-analysis that looked at 103 studies, and they found that maximal strength was mostly unaffected following up to 28 days or 4 weeks off training. However, strength losses accelerated following this. As for strength endurance, or the ability to exert force over an extended period of time, aka what you do when you're running, they found that this was impacted sooner and to a greater degree as compared to strength, which is not entirely surprising because we know that in general, endurance drops off faster than strength when we take a break. However, zooming out, this meta-analysis saw decreases in fitness in the general population after 4 weeks. The general population is not the group of people who just carried and then delivered a baby. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad about your body. I mean, you just accomplished an incredible physical feat, but at the same time, when somebody runs an ultra marathon, do you see them going out the next day going for like a long run? No, absolutely not, because they know that they should prioritize recovery. I know it might feel like I am harping on this, but if there is one thing I learned from my own journey of healing, as well as asking every question possible to my pelvic PT, it's that now is not the time to rush your recovery or jump back into running. So my first run back was not really what I was expecting. A bit of context, I was really looking forward to the 12-week mark because in my mind, like this was the date that I was just gonna jump back into running fully, follow my training plan, get into a routine, like get back to doing my thing. I had been working really hard with my pelvic PT. Everything had been going well for me physically. I wasn't having any symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction, like there was no leaking, no heaviness, no dragging. However, what I did not anticipate was hitting the 4-month sleep regression early, and also how difficult it would be to schedule running with a baby. When we hit the sleep regression, it was really hard to get even 30 minutes of uninterrupted time for me because she went from sleeping like a baby, sleeping wonderfully throughout the day, to all of a sudden she wasn't napping for more than 20 minutes at a time. She was really fussy. At night, it was much the same. So I was not sleeping very well. And no matter how much caffeine I pumped into my body, I mean, there's a limit for these things. So I did not get back to running in the way that I wanted to at 12 weeks. And to be honest, I probably could have started, but I think it was one of those situations where I'd gotten into a bit of an all or nothing mindset. And I told myself, well, if I can't do it perfectly, if I can't get into a super consistent routine, then I don't want to start running. Long story short, my first actual continuous uninterrupted run happened closer to 16 weeks when we finally were starting to get into a crib napping routine, a better bedtime routine. Like I could actually set her down at night in the crib and she would stay asleep for at least a few hours at a time. It was not the ideal run that I had imagined. It was at the end of a long work day. It was once I'd done the bedtime routine, gotten her settled for the night, but the treadmill was there. I had been trying to fit in a run all week. I was honestly just so frustrated. So I said, screw it. I'm gonna run today. I'm gonna put on my shoes before I even have a chance to talk myself out of this. And I got on that treadmill and I did my run. I did not have high expectations for this run. I didn't even really have a plan for this run. I just knew that I was gonna really take my time during my warm-up, focus on feeling whatever my body needed to feel. I think I probably ended up doing maybe a 15 to 20 minute warm-up, and then I just picked up the pace for a few kind of unstructured intervals to see how a faster run would feel for my body. And that was it for my first run. But I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't feel any heaviness. I didn't feel any discomfort in my pelvic floor during the run itself. Immediately after, I still felt pretty good. I wasn't completely gassed. Like my endurance was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. Probably because I'd already been back to weightlifting and doing some walking before I started running again. But I will say something that was interesting was after a few hours had passed, so like before going to bed that night and then into the next day, I definitely felt a deeper sense of fatigue in my pelvic floor. It wasn't like a pain, it wasn't anything sharp or even dull feeling. It wasn't a pain at all. It wasn't even really a discomfort. It was just a deep sense of fatigue in the muscles. They felt a little sluggish, they felt a little slower to contract and engage during other activities. So initially, after those first few runs that I did, I was very intentional about taking the next day off of weightlifting and obviously off of running. Like up until recently, I was doing one run a week at best. So backtracking a little bit, what did I do from 0 to 12 weeks before that 12-week mark where in theory I could have gotten back to running? I talk more about this in that video I mentioned at the start where I give you the week by week breakdown of how I returned to training. But long story short, from 0 to 6 weeks, I focused on rest, recovery, and building the strength to return to everyday activities like walking, sitting, standing, taking care of my baby. I also did a lot of core connection breathing, gentle activation exercises so that I could rebuild awareness around my core and pelvic floor. Then from 6 to 12 weeks, I focused on gradually returning to weightlifting, rebuilding my strength endurance, doing a little bit of cardio type training. I mean, like I was walking. I do show you some specific exercises in that other video, but the focus of my training was a lot on core stability and control, single leg stability and strength. If you want more examples of exercises you can be doing, I've filmed pretty much every workout I did postpartum for the Team Plans app. I also recorded a bunch while I was pregnant, but in the app, there are series that are curated for pregnancy and postpartum friendly, that are low impact, that are running friendly. There's so much good stuff in there. So I'll link that down below as well. So I obviously worked with a pelvic PT, and I will continue recommending that every pregnant woman budget for and invest in at least an initial consult with a pelvic PT postpartum. But let's just say you're not working with a pelvic PT. How will you know when you are ready to start running? Probably the best resource we have on this right now is a testing system that was developed by a group of physiotherapists out of the UK. I'll link it down below, but it basically involves 2 tests, one for load and one for strength. The goal is to be able to complete both of these tests without experiencing any symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction. For the load test, you should be able to hold a single leg balance for 10 seconds per leg, a single leg squat for 10 reps per leg, jog on the spot for 60 seconds, do forward bounce for 10 reps. I didn't have a lot of room, so this is what we've got. Hop in place for 10 reps per leg, single leg running person 10 reps per leg, and treadmill walk for 30 minutes. As for the strength test, the goal is to be able to complete a single leg calf raise for 20 reps per side, single leg sit to stand 20 reps per side, single leg bridge 20 reps per side, and a sideline abduction for 20 reps per side. So what happens if you don't pass the test? That's probably a good indication that you need longer for recovery, for building up your strength. Continue focusing on core strength, core control, integrating your breathing with your core and pelvic floor, working on single leg stability and strength. This would also be a great time if you haven't invested in pelvic PT to maybe invest in that, do a little bit of troubleshooting, say, hey, I tried this is where I'm struggling. What do you recommend? This is literally what they are experts in. So once you're ready to start running, how do we actually get back to running gradually? Well, luckily I've got another framework for you. I did a ton of digging for today's video. There is actually an evidence-based framework. It's a 4-phase approach. The goal is to be able to go from walking, making sure you can tolerate that without any pelvic floor symptoms, to then walk, running, working over time to decrease the amount of walking you're doing until you can run continuously, and then progressing that run training as you would at any other stage of your journey. Now, beyond just returning and running gradually, something I wanted to make sure we touched on was running form, because this is something I really struggled with on my running journey before even being aware that I was having a baby, but it becomes especially important once you've had a baby, because now it's not just important to reduce the wear and tear on your joints, but we also want to reduce excess impact on our pelvic floor. Now, there are a few things that we want to pay attention to when it comes to running form through the lens of a postpartum athlete. The first one that I learned about is arm swing. So if you've ever read anything about running form, you might see some people cautioning against having excessive arm swing, where your arms actually cross over the center line of your body. But that doesn't mean that arm swing is a bad thing. When I was first working on improving my running form pre-baby, I just got really nervous about any arm swing, and it caused me to have like this really tight and rigid running form, which holding that tension in my upper body was just wasting energy that I could have been using for my running. By allowing your arms to swing naturally by your sides, not excessively crossing your body, that's actually going to help you breathe better, engage your muscles more effectively, and get a better hip drive out of each stride. Something else that's a little bit harder to work on, it took me a really long time to get this one down, is your foot strike. So again, if you've ever read anything about running form, you might see people talk about heel strike versus forefoot strike. From my research, like there is so much on this could be a topic for a whole other video. From what I've read, it's not so much about whether you're a heel striker or a front of foot striker, but it's more about where your foot is landing underneath your body. I'm gonna put a comparison on screen. Hopefully you guys can see the difference. I tried to make it very dramatic, but in one of these videos, my foot is landing under my body, whereas in the other video, my foot is landing out and in front of my body. When you are landing with your foot under your body, that's going to allow your muscles and joints to absorb that force more effectively. Whereas when your foot is landing out and in front of your body, it's a lot harder for your body to absorb those forces, and oftentimes they get transmitted more so to our joints, more so to our pelvic floor, and less to our muscles. The easiest way to fix this, rather than like looking down at the ground when you're running and trying to figure out how to adjust what you're doing in like the fraction of a second it takes to make a stride, is by focusing on taking smaller and quicker steps. The moment your foot hits the ground, pulling that foot right back up. This is where the data from the Coros watch is really going to come in handy. I like to run with cadence on my activity screen, as cadence describes the number of times that your feet hit the ground per minute. Now, you'll hear a lot of people throw around the number 180, as this is what many athletes will run at or above, but honestly, start from where you're at and work to pick up the pace of your feet over time. Something that took me a long time to wrap my head around is that you should be able to run with fast feet even at slower paces. It's all about how quickly your feet are turning over, not necessarily how quickly you are moving. Anyways, that is it for today. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you enjoyed learning about my running journey. I always love hearing about your journey. So if you started running post-baby, if maybe it's going well, if maybe you're struggling, let me know in the comments. I always love reading. I always love hearing from you. Info about the Coros watches will also be in the description box down below. So if you want to check that out, if you buy any watch through that link, you will get a free accessory. So kind of fun. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.